for now. So it's just basically broadcasting it on YouTube right now. And I'll introduce the podcast, and I'll introduce you, and I'll let you tell your journey. So get comfortable.
I got the heat blasting on me.
I've got the AC blasting on me.
I know, I bet. I bet.
Welcome again to Rock and Recovery. I'm your host, Jay. Today, my guest is Dr. Sarah Michaud. I hope I said that name, or at least close. At least I didn't butcher it too much. And she's here to tell her sober story, her journey into sobriety, what led her into addiction, what she was trying to cope with, whatever else it is. And I'm sure I'm going to have some questions after she starts talking. So, Dr. Sarah, take it away.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Jay. I am Sarah, and I am pretty much addicted to everything, probably like a lot of people. Really great to be here. I just celebrated 42 years, so I feel like I've been around a long
42
time.
years?
42!
Okay, first of all, I'm going to give you a compliment. You don't look old enough to have 42 years of
You're
sobriety. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say that. But yeah, I'll take that as a compliment or whatever else, but you don't look that old enough to have 42 years of sobriety.
You're very sweet. I mean, I often say, I thank God for the drugs, because the drugs brought me, I don't know if I could have drank for 20 more years, but when you start getting involved in drugs, then you start stealing, then the law gets involved, then arrests start happening, the usual. So, I got sober when I was 24, and,
Wow.
And I only used for 8 years drugs and alcohol, which is wild when I think about it, because even now when it's so weird. I get choked up, Jay, even just thinking about it now, about some of the stuff I did. So I feel like even though that was my journey, it was enough. I had definitely had enough experiences during that time where I still get chills up and down my spine when I think about it.
Yeah.
And so, like a lot of people, I drank, in high school or whatever. And the minute I picked up drinking, I knew that this was it for me. And it relieved me of all my anxiety, all my insecurity, all my negative self-thinking. At that age, it's funny because I'm a shrink, and a lot of times kids come in when they're like in 7th and 8th grade, because those junior high school years, 13, 14, 15, 16, is when really so much happens to people. And you're really trying to figure out who you are and your identity, and do I belong, and all that stuff. And I feel like that's such a ripe time for us to pick up, because I never felt like I belonged from the beginning. I grew up, I had 4 brothers who I perceived as all being, athletes and gorgeous and successful and had tons of friends. And I was the only girl, and my mom was an active alcoholic, and my father was a vet and who was really angry and had plenty of PTSD. And so I felt, like a lot of people, super alone growing up, super different, like something was wrong with me. Why don't I fit in? All of that stuff. So from the minute I picked up booze, I just felt like everything was going to be okay, which of course is completely delusional, because that's really when things start going downhill. And just to say also, I don't know if your audience believes in the genetics, but my mother was an alcoholic. Her mother was an alcoholic. Her brothers were alcoholic. It was definitely in my, I often say I had a predisposition. And then the minute the booze entered my body, I knew that was it. Like, I don't think I ever drank socially after that. So I really felt like from the minute it got into my system, I was in that physical compulsion, and it became the psychological solution to my pain. And in my recovery, in the years of recovery, we often talk about the underlying causes and conditions. And, I've also written a book on codependency. We can talk about that. Because I really feel like the booze is really just the solution in my mind, right? I mean, before that, I was full of pain. I was full of sadness. I was full of anxiety. I was full of resentment. I was full of fear. I didn't feel like I belonged. I wanted to be loved, all that stuff that all humans want. And for whatever reason, because of how I was brought up or my genes, alcohol seemed to be the answer to all that. Now, for someone else, it might be, sports or, I don't know, shopping or whatever.
Are you saying like you had a predisposition to alcohol just based on your genes?
Yeah. That's just my belief. Yeah.
I believe that too. Honestly, I
Yes.
believe that addictions can be passed to generation just because, growing up with it, you see it. I don't necessarily mean past, but I mean, it's the norm growing
Yes.
up or
Yes.
how you lived it. So it's like
Yes.
normal to have that, to do that, to cope with something like that. I can see how that would be passed down type of generational trauma or condition.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, how much of it is biological and how much is an environment? The all bets are off. I mean, who knows, right? Who knows? But yes, obviously learning how people are coping in your household is one thing. And then having a genetic reaction, meaning the way I responded to my first drink might be different than someone else who didn't have a genetic predisposition. So yes, I believe that, and again, like my son's 24, I believe he has a predisposition. Both his parents are addicts in sobriety. Now he hasn't, he's drank maybe twice because I think I've, taught him a lot over the years. And I don't know if, is that predisposition, is that going to get activated at some point or not? I can't say, hopefully not. So I'm not saying that anybody who has the genes necessarily becomes an addict, but I think, statistically, it increases the percentage. So yeah, I mean, so from the minute I picked it up, it was my solution. And, from then I got just more and more, needing it. Eventually I got into cocaine. It was the 70s and cocaine was everywhere. I'm sure it's everywhere now, but so when I got out of high school, I had applied to colleges and I deferred for a year. And which means I kind of said, I'm going to go a year from now. And as my father famously said, you can sow your wild oats, which basically meant I moved to Miami, which was not the best idea.
Welcome to Miami. Yeah.
So, 1978 in Miami, cocaine was on every street corner.
Wasn't that the home of the cocaine cowboys? And
it was, yeah. I mean, I wasn't involved at that kind of level, but my cocaine use just took off. And again, it just, I guess the more I did, the more detached I got from myself, the more bottoms I had. I mean, at that time, I remember, God, I'm remembering a story from Miami, which is, I remember we were hanging out. I went down there with a friend of mine. We were hanging out with these two guys that we, met randomly, bought Coke from them. And several days later, I was asleep and a guy woke me up pointing a gun at me. And it was a police officer. And the night before, his partner had gotten shot by one of the guys that I was dating.
Wow.
And that kind of says how oblivious I was to who I was hanging out with, to who I was, I mean, I was just high all the time. I was working as a waitress at a hotel out on Key Biscayne that I don't think is there anymore. It was called the Key Biscayne Hotel. And, I took a bus at 4:30 in the morning every day out there. And then I'd get out at like 2. And that would be the beginning of my day and night. And, I was only down there for about 6 months, like during the winter season, but lots of psychological kind of damage. And I remember my father sent 2 of my brothers down there to rescue me because I was so into the drug culture and they were worried, like, that I was losing my mind. And to be honest with you, my brothers basically came down and we just partied. So, I
Wow.
mean, God bless
Well, they
them.
were no help. They just,
they were no
they're
help.
brothers. They were no help. Let's just be real.
I
My brothers
mean,
came down to get me out of here,
I
but
know.
decided to stay and have fun with me.
I know. I mean, we were all in our 20s. I mean, or actually,
Yeah.
I think I was like 19. So anyways, long story short, I came home. I went to Chicago to college that fall, and unfortunately, the drug addiction followed me. I mean, that's the whole joke, right? No matter where I go, I'm not going to escape my drug addiction. So again, another huge jackpot in Chicago. I end up coming home for Thanksgiving. I owe a cocaine dealer a ton of money. He fronts me an ounce of coke, which I bring back to Chicago because in my mind, I think I'm going to go back there. I'm going to sell the ounce of coke and I'm going to make money so I can pay him back, not just for the ounce of coke, but also the money
more.
I owe him.
Right.
By the time we got to Chicago, half of it was gone because, I'm a drug addict. And so I'm at a dorm in Chicago and I have this brilliant idea of stealing my roommate's checks.
Oh,
and
geez.
These are all like the amends over the years I've had to make because, like I say, the problem with drugs is drugs cost money. And so the illegal things you start getting into and why I think I hit a bottom so quick is because of this. So I steal checks. I get a couple of friends of mine and we go do a bank robbery, which is basically we have a getaway car. We drive up to the window. We try to cash these checks. And the woman in the bank recognizes us. Well, basically doesn't recognize us because knows the woman who the checks belong to. This other friend of mine went in the front of the bank. So we kind of get caught and the woman's asking us where, who are we, blah, blah, blah. So we take off in the car. We come around the corner and we pick up my friend who basically had cashed the checks. So, stealing checks is a felony. And that night, 3 friends of ours had gotten arrested thinking that they were us because it was 3 girls walking through town. And they came back to the dorm and they told us that we needed to turn ourselves in the next day. And so we turned ourselves in the next day. And my father had a picture of me with my number plate held up in front of me for years in a lockbox in his bedroom. And, thank God that during that time, it was kind of, we had to go back. We got out of school, obviously kicked out of school, and we had to go back to court. And it was kind of presented as a college prank. And none of the drugs or any of that came into it. So, I'm basically kicked out of college and I go back to Boston. So, from then on until I bottomed out is 5 years. And so for the next 5 years, it's basically.
So we're talking like mid, late 20s, maybe early 30s?
No, early 20s. I got sober at 24. So, for the next 5 years, it's basically just cocaine, arrests, jobs, hanging out in worse and worse and worse environments. I got 6 tattoos. It's just like my lifestyle and what I was doing was just, in the end, I was basically dating a drug smuggler, and, you know, hit a bottom in a drug house. And,
Yeah.
you know, so that was kind of the end, just like lots of desperation. You know, I mean, this story will wrap up how I felt about myself. Is I was dating a guy who liked to go in to see strippers in Boston. And one of the women was the girlfriend of of a guy we used to hang out with. Like, I can't believe it's like I tell you this story and I'm like, who is this person? Like, it doesn't even feel like me.
Right.
But I remember following him. Like, we were in a fight and we were
Oh,
wasted, and I followed him into the strip joint. And I remember sitting there watching this woman, Crystal. Of course, her name was Crystal. And thinking to myself, I wish I was her. Now, Crystal
wow.
was a heroin addict, had a baby at home. I mean, her life was so dark and bad. And yet I'm feeling so bad about myself that being her was a step up. So I
Wow.
tell that story because that's how, you know, that's where I was at the end. Like, you know, Dr. Sarah Michaud, that's where I was. So, you know, I bottomed out in a drug house and I ended up calling one of my brothers, and I ended up in a psych hospital, 1984, February 6th. And, you know, it's been a journey since then.
So did you go to a rehab or a treatment or?
Yeah, I went to a psych hospital / rehab where, interesting enough, 10 years later, after going to college and graduate school and becoming a psychologist, my first job was at this place.
Same place.
Yeah.
It's funny
Talk
how things
about
like that come
fulfilling.
full
Yes.
circle, you know?
Mhm.
So tell me,
Yeah.
so when did you realize, was it that moment that you're wishing you were this other girl's when you realized you had the problem?
I mean, I think during those 5 years of like a waitress job, losing the job, you know, waking up,
Just
owing
drifting
money.
through life,
Yeah,
basically.
it was just, I mean, during that whole time, I think I just knew I had a problem, but you know, like, I don't know if this happened to you, like, the further along you get, the worse it is, and the more things you do so you don't see it. Do you know what I mean? Like, the
I
worse
do.
it get, like, I started stealing my family's jewelry, my
Yeah.
grandmother's pearls, selling them for drugs. I mean, your behavior gets so awful that sobriety like, I don't want to stop because I don't want to
Right.
deal with the person I've become.
I don't want to deal with all the things that I've done and
Yes.
the person that I am now. And I don't have to want to make up for all the shit that I've done because
Yes.
there's such a long shopping list of it.
Oh,
You know, where do I start? What do I start doing? Yeah, I
absolutely.
understand that.
Yeah, and you know, it's so interesting too because oh, I lost my train of thought.
That happens to me all the time. I
Yeah,
call them
I
squirrels,
know, right?
squirrel moments,
Oh, I know what I was going to say. Like, when I got sober and started to go to recovery groups and different things and therapy, and um it's so much easier to perceive yourself as a victim rather than owning, wow, I did this, I got to make up for it, and that's where the freedom lies. There is no freedom in being a victim. So that, I believe, when seeing clients over the years, it really seems like, because I ended up working with addicts and addiction and ended up working at that hospital and then out of practice, etc. And it really seems like when someone can move from feeling like a victim to owning their history, what's happened, and being responsible, that's when recovery really takes off. I don't know what you think about that, Jay, but
You know, for me, it was, uh, see, I got sober long before I got into recovery.
got it.
You know, I got sober after I found my wife hanging in my closet. So
Jeez.
that's when I got sober. I mean, I figured my life couldn't get any more worse, you
Yes.
know, so I was either gonna do the same thing myself
Yep.
or get clean and sober. So my addiction was methamphetamine,
Got
and
it.
I was an IV user. So after that, I had an argument with God,
Yep.
and like a really good one. I called him all kinds of shit. Uh, and he's like, "Well, guess what? I answered. You're gonna have to accept what you got because I just answered your prayers.
Yeah.
I answered everything that you asked for, and here's your chance. This is what you wanted. What are you gonna do with it?" And so I decided to stay sober. And I mean, I had the drugs. I had the drugs in my room, the room that I just found my wife in.
Got it.
I couldn't go back there, so that's what kept me sober.
Yep.
I couldn't go back into that room without seeing that. So that's what kept me sober for the first 2 or 3 days.
Yes.
Now what? Now what am I going to do? I've got 2 or 3 days where I just want to get high and forget everything.
Yep.
I'll be honest, I just want to forget the last 3 days happened.
Yeah.
I don't want to remember none of this, but I don't want to forget her.
No.
So it's I got sober so I didn't forget.
Yes.
And it was probably almost a year after that I actually started to do recovery.
Yep.
And since then, I mean, yeah, being clean and sober is fucking great. Just being able to stay sober is just freaking, or clean and sober is just fucking fantastic. But then starting to work on yourself in recovery is a total different ballgame. You're getting to the root causes, you're getting to the whys and the ifs, and everything else that led up to you being an addict, or for me being an addict for the last almost 30 years, 20 of them in prison, and 30 years off and on for the last 30 years.
Yes.
So recovery for me is when I decided to put in the work to work on myself and better myself. Yes, if you're an addict and you just get clean and sober, fantastic. That's not recovery. Recovery is working on the root cause so it doesn't happen again. I can maintain sobriety, I can maintain being clean, but I'm still got all these issues. So what am I doing? I'm just balling it up. Then I'm going to explode on somebody. And okay, I'm sober. I'll get mad and blow up. I'll freaking lose my shit on somebody. I'm sober though. Hey, I'm not using. I'm sober. But am I really? Because you can use anger as an addiction too. You can use everything else as an addiction also. So when you start to release the anger, working on your shadow self, you want to call it, your inner self, your inner child, whatever fancy term you want to use it. Once you start bettering yourself, you get closer to your higher power, you start bettering yourself. That is, for me, that's the definition of recovery, is working to recover yourself. Recover what you've lost as an addict.
Yes.
Recover your emotions, your feelings, your everything else that you were coping with a drug or with a substance.
Yes.
With whatever substance that may be, whether it be a chemical substance or a physical defect substance, codependency, anger, whatever it could be that you're using a substance to cope with. Once you start working on yourself, recovering yourself, your emotions, your thoughts, your feelings, yourself, your happiness, your joy, your peace. Once you start working on to recover that for me is what recovery is.
Jay, you're speaking my language, okay? I mean, everything you just said is exactly how I feel. And, I think because we could talk so much about what you just said, because having been around a really long time, I mean, I've seen plenty of people, right, get sober. And and I know people that get sober and then start gambling or gain 100 pounds or like, just start picking up all these different addictions. You can get sober and switch addictions. I mean, I've seen it for years. And, not that I haven't done some switching at times, or relationships. I mean, that's why I got into the whole codependency thing, because so many people I know have sacrificed themselves in relationships. And it's just like putting another person as your higher power rather than God. And I totally agree with you. I mean, I ran into a guy, I went to a meeting around the area where I got sober, and I went to one last year, and there was a guy, and his name was Angry John, like 40 years ago. And he got sober, and he literally just gets angrier and angrier and angrier. And is it good that he's sober? Yes. But, and I know people that are having affairs on their spouses in sobriety, or they're not treating their kids. Just because someone puts down the booze and the drugs doesn't mean they're going to deal with the underlying stuff. So I agree. I mean, working on our stuff has been, my journey the whole time. And, I hit two bottoms in my recovery. I mean, at 10 years sober, I was in a graduate program to get a doctorate in psychology. And I thought I was losing my mind because my issues were catching up with me. And I ended up going to treatment at 10 years sober because I thought I was going crazy. I didn't pick up a drink, but I hadn't dealt with all that past trauma, the underlying anger, the underlying fears. And so I had to deal with that. And then I married a guy who relapsed. I married a guy who was 15 years sober, and he relapsed, and my life blew apart. And, that's where I ended up dealing with a lot of relationship stuff. And, because again, I think that's super common. If you grew up in some kind of dysfunction, it's going to play out in your relationships. That's where it plays out.
By the way, lost your volume. Something happened.
You lost my volume?
I cannot hear you no more.
Huh. Can you hear me now?
Maybe it's mine. Nope, no. Mine. Pause for these commercial breaks. Not really. We're just gonna pause though.
Oh, I don't know what to do. Let's see.
I don't know. We'll figure it out. Hold on. Let me drop you down and bring you back up. Bam. Well, everybody, we're having technical difficulties. We're back to stage. How about now?
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me?
Okay, I hear you.
Huh. Okay. Sorry about that. Can you edit that stuff out or? Oh. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Hey. No? Oh, crap. Can you not hear me? Hmm. Should I sign up and sign
I don't know what's
back
going
on?
on.
Back on.
Don't know what's going on.
Let me sign up. You
I
there?
don't know what's going on here.
Huh.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me? But you're
You
garbled.
cannot hear me.
Oh,
We're
okay.
gonna have to reschedule because I don't know what's going on.
Okay. Okay.
We'll just do a
All right.
part 2. We'll just do a
Okay.
part 2.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.